No cameras, no aides, no palace staff. Just two of the most influential women in modern monarchy, locked in a private chamber for nearly 2 hours. What began as a hushed conversation spiraled into a declaration that would reshape royal power forever. Why now? What pushed Catherine and Sophie to conspire, and what were they about to dismantle? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. There had been whispers for weeks, but no one expected it to unfold this quickly or this quietly. On a cold afternoon, while the palace appeared to follow its usual rhythm, something shifted. Catherine arrived first, her vehicle discreet and without fanfare, her usual security team nowhere in sight. Minutes later, Sophie entered through a side entrance, her demeanor calm but focused. No greetings, no staff assistance. A silent acknowledgement passed between them as the door to the private chamber was locked from the inside. No official calendar marked this meeting. No aide was permitted to document the session. It was as if the meeting didn't exist at all, and that made it even more dangerous. Behind those closed doors, a pact was about to be written in silence, not ink. The weight of recent months had been bearing down on them both. Camilla's growing grip on palace protocol had not gone unnoticed, particularly after her sudden presence in key advisory meetings. Meetings Catherine was inexplicably left out of. Sophie, ever the loyal player in the royal game, had remained in the background for years, but something about Camilla's increasingly autocratic behavior had awakened an urgency in her. The two women, once navigating parallel paths, now found themselves face to face with a singular purpose, changed the power dynamic before it consumed what was left of the crown's unity. Sources close to inner palace circles confirmed that the meeting had been building up for weeks. Princess Anne, long regarded as the unshakable pillar of tradition, had reportedly whispered to Sophie in confidence, "You'll know when it's time." That moment had come. With King Charles still recovering from a health scare just days prior, the kingdom was vulnerable, and the women knew it. If they waited, Camilla would tighten her grip. If they acted now, they had a chance to reshape the monarchy from within. And so the conversation began not with outrage, but with truth. Two voices that had been sidelined for far too long, finally giving shape to the frustration, the betrayals, and the silent war that had simmered beneath polished tiaras and diplomatic smiles. The fact that no records exist of what was said between them only adds to the mystery. But what followed was impossible to ignore. Shortly after the door reopened, both women emerged with a calm that belied the storm they had just unleashed. Aides exchanged uneasy glances as Catherine made a direct call to her personal secretary. Sophie walked straight toward the East Wing, where Camilla's influence had reigned unchecked. Something had shifted, and even those unaware of the details could feel it. The Queen Consort hadn't yet realized what had been set in motion, but the countdown had begun. But what exactly unfolded in that soundproofed room, and why did its outcome send shockwaves through the monarchy within minutes? Sources close to palace staff claim the meeting wasn't just emotional, it was revolutionary. Catherine, steady yet steely. Sophie, trembling but resolute. The two made a pact neither had dared voice before. And that pact carried one devastating goal: remove Camilla's influence permanently. What happened next was never meant for the public eye, but the fallout made it impossible to hide. Catherine, known for her measured grace, did not raise her voice. But what she revealed during that fateful conversation was enough to crack the foundation Camilla had quietly cemented over the years. She allegedly presented a confidential briefing, pages of reports, testimonies, and inconsistencies that pointed to Camilla's increasing manipulation of palace dynamics. From key staff dismissals to the redirection of event protocols and even press access schedules, every page told the same story. Camilla wasn't just advising, she was controlling. And Catherine had the receipts. Sophie sat in silence at first, but the deeper Catherine went, the more her expression shifted from shock to grim understanding. Then Sophie did something she hadn't done in years. She spoke her truth. A truth she had buried under loyalty, decorum, and fear. She admitted to long-held private concerns about Camilla's overreach, about the moments she felt frozen out, not by accident, but by design. She recalled instances when her ideas were dismissed only to be rephrased and championed by Camilla in private meetings. She confided in Catherine, revealing painful moments where even her daughter, Lady Louise, had been subtly sidelined from events she had previously been promised to attend. It was more than exclusion, it was orchestration. And Sophie could no longer pretend it wasn't happening. It was in that emotional furnace that an unspoken alliance began to form. Not with fire, but with firepower rooted in mutual trust, shared grief, and a dawning sense of duty to protect the monarchy from imploding under quiet tyranny. What began as a candid discussion became a strategy. They didn't need to scream to make it a revolution. They only needed to act. The conversatio. N turned toward official mechanisms. What real power did they hold? How far could they go without sparking public chaos? What levers remained untouched by Camilla's influence? That's when the mention of Anne came subtle but seismic. Sophie nodded, understanding immediately. Anne had known this was coming, and now it was up to them to finish what she could not begin alone. Before they left the room, Catherine pulled out a sheet of paper. On it, she began to draft word by deliberate word a statement not yet meant for release, but intended as a weapon of truth, should Camilla resist what was coming. It was said she folded the paper 3 times, sealed it with wax and locked it away in a drawer only she and William had access to. It wasn't just a document, it was a line in the sand, a royal threshold that once crossed could not be undone. Their plan was no longer hypothetical, it had been set in motion. Camilla's reign of quiet dominance had met its reckoning, and it came not with force, but with resolve, with evidence, and with unity forged in pain. As this alliance solidified, the question became not if Camilla would fall, but how and who would help them take her down from within. They were sworn to silence, but palace corridors have always had ears. Aides, housekeepers, and security officers started noticing changes, doors left ajar, whispers behind tapestries, and one slip-up, one overheard name would make Camilla realize she was being boxed in. The silence after Sophie and Catherine's private meeting was at first almost convincing. But for those who lived and worked within the palace walls, something felt off. Routine movements were disrupted, security patterns subtly rearranged, and key personnel were no longer where they'd been the day before. It began with a hushed conversation overheard outside the library, 2 senior aides referring to something called the Windsor Clause, a phrase that had never surfaced in official protocol but carried the weight of a hidden mechanism. Those who heard it pretended not to, but they didn't forget, especially when, within hours, Camilla's most trusted lady-in-waiting, who had served by her side for over a decade, was suddenly reassigned to the Sandringham estate with no explanation. The palace runs on a delicate system of hierarchy and tradition, so when a document marked with the royal crest was seen being hand-delivered by Prince Edward's personal guard, eyebrows were raised, especially since the courier bypassed the usual royal handlers and went directly into the private wing where Catherine had recently moved her office. Those who noticed said nothing aloud, but the shift was undeniable. And while gossip is as common as tea in those gilded halls, this time, it wasn't gossip, it was warning. Rumours spread that Princess Anne had not only been briefed on Catherine and Sophie's alliance, but had approved it in writing, weeks before the meeting even happened. A calculated move that suggested this wasn't a rebellion, it was a long-laid strategy. What truly shattered the illusion of secrecy were the text messages, leaked through anonymous channels to a select group of royal correspondents. They revealed code-named conversations between senior aides, referring to CNC ending her hold. The initials were not missed. Camilla may have been the queen consort, but Catherine and Sophie were building a different crown, one forged in quiet rebellion and justified by years of private resentment. And then, without warning, a junior equerry, someone who had served Camilla's office faithfully, disappeared from the palace records. No exit announcement, no relocation statement, just gone. Insiders believed he had provided critical details of Camilla's private actions to the Catherine-Sophie alliance. His loyalty, it seemed, had not been for sale, but his conscience had a price. The tension inside the palace became electric. Every glance held questions, every movement a possible signal. The staff had been trained to serve without comment, but the balance of power was tipping fast. Camilla could feel it. Her instructions were suddenly questioned, her usual paths within the palace subtly rerouted. Those who once answered with immediacy began to delay, and in a house where everything runs by ritual and order, delay is defiance. She knew she was being surrounded, not with swords but with silence. A silence more cutting than confrontation. But Camilla, ever cunning, wasn't about to watch her reign be dismantled quietly. She struck back, and she struck hard. Cornered but not conquered, Camilla made her move. Late-night calls, veiled threats, and a desperate plea to King Charles himself. The Queen Consort wasn't just reacting, she was declaring war. But what she didn't realize was that the palace tide had already shifted. In the immediate aftermath of the Catherine and Sophie alliance, Camilla's instinct screamed that something was unraveling and fast. The silence around her wasn't ignorance, it was orchestration. She attempted to counter it with what she knew best, control. Her first response was swift and sharp. She demanded an emergency meeting with Charles, not once, but twice, invoking her title, her right, her proximity. Both times her request was met with vague delays. And then, without warning, the king's team informed her that His Majesty was unavailable until further notice. That silence, that denial, it was louder than any royal decree. Desperation breeds strategy, and Camilla turned to blood. She reached out to Anne, hoping to pull the sister-in-law card, to remind her of familial unity, of the long-standing camaraderie they had, or at least pretended to have. But Anne, now firmly standing behind Catherine and Sophie, gave no room for negotiation. Her words, as relayed by insiders, were cutting and clear. "You've had your time." Camilla was stunned. The one royal she believed too loyal to turn had shut the door. Refusing to be silenced, Camilla took matters into her own hands. She drafted a confidential memorandum, an unofficial reaffirmation of her role within the monarchy's strategic advisory circle. In it, she emphasized her ongoing influence over ceremonial functions, staff oversight, and her input on Charles's schedule. The memo was intended to circulate quietly through the palace leadership, but it never made it past the private secretary's desk. One royal aide simply marked it unendorsed and returned it without comment. That quiet rejection sent Camilla into a tailspin. Over the next 48 hours, her demeanor, once calculated and cold, became visibly unstable. Multiple aides reported erratic instructions, contradictory orders, and sudden dismissals of long-time assistants. Camilla had begun unraveling, and the palace watched. In a bold move, she head out to Princess Beatrice, someone she believed might be swayed with the promise of restored favor and influence. The call, though brief, was reportedly recorded by an insider and leaked almost immediately. In the audio, Camilla allegedly referred to Catherine as dangerous and accused Sophie of poisoning Anne's loyalty. The damage was done. And then came her boldest and most reckless play. In an unguarded moment of fury, Camilla threatened to have Catherine's longtime advisor dismissed from palace duties. The man had been a quiet pillar beside Catherine for over a decade. Camilla's warning was sharp, but it never had the chance to land. Internal protocol now protected him, protocol recently restructured under Princess Anne's signature, a quiet shield against future abuses of power. Camilla's threat had not only failed, it had exposed her desperation. Even as Camilla tried to claw back control, a single move by Charles would render all her efforts meaningless. He didn't speak, he didn't need to. When Charles passed the sealed envelope to Catherine, palace observers knew everything had changed. It was the king's quietest decision, but also his loudest. Behind that paper, a signature, a seal, and a future without Camilla's authority. In the stillness that followed Camilla's failed counteroffensive, the monarchy stood on a ledge one tremor away from complete collapse. King Charles, fragile in both health and resolve, found himself forced into a decision he had spent years avoiding. His physical condition had worsened in recent weeks, and behind closed doors, whispers of a reduced schedule and reliance on William had already begun circulating. His grip on the crown, both literally and symbolically, was slipping. And into that void stepped Catherine, not with demands, but with evidence, not with emotion, but with clarity. She brought forward the document, the very one drafted in that fateful meeting with Sophie. Laid before the king, it bore neither accusation nor plea, it bore facts. And in that moment, Charles understood. He didn't ask questions. He didn't argue. He read in silence while Prince Edward stood nearby, silent but firm, his presence a quiet declaration of unity behind this move. And when Charles looked up, Edward's words landed like a gavel. It's time. What followed wasn't royal pomp or performance. It was a stroke of a pen, a royal decree signed in absolute discretion. It outlined the formal reduction of Queen Camilla's involvement in all palace household matters. Advisory input revoked, staff oversight returned to the monarch's direct line, ceremonial roles realigned. The language was precise, stripped of ambiguity. And it didn't mention Camilla by name, but everyone in that room knew exactly who it targeted. The envelope, once signed and sealed, was handed to Catherine without ceremony. She nodded once. The moment was complete. But as she turned to leave, Charles, worn, pale and emotionally undone, whispered the words no one expected. From a monarch, "I can't fight anymore." The decision was not announced, not officially. That was never the plan. Instead, it was leaked in fragments, first to a select group of aides, then carefully placed into the hands of trusted press sources. A single line buried in a longer piece about palace restructuring, a whisper, not a scream. But it was enough for those within the system to recognize the shift. Camilla's calls were now filtered, her requests rerouted. Her titles remained, but her authority had vanished in a signature. The storm had yet to hit the public, but one person already knew. Someone whose pride had been pierced and whose fury would soon ignite a wave of retaliation unlike anything the palace had faced before. The news hadn't even hit the tabloids, but one person already knew, and her fury would ignite a storm. The sound of shattered glass echoed through Clarence's house. Camilla, red-eyed and raging, reportedly demanded access to every file, every phone call, every thread of royal control she still believed she had. But she was too late, and what she did next stunned even her most loyal aides. It was as though the silence that followed, Charles's quiet signature, ignited something violent within her. For months, she had ruled from behind velvet curtains, managing appearances, controlling influence, shaping narratives. And now, with a single sealed decree, her world collapsed. Those who witnessed the Queen Consort's fury that day said it was unlike anything ever seen within the palace walls. She stormed into her office and screamed at the top of her lungs, slamming drawers, flinging papers, demanding everyone get out, before collapsing into her chair in a tremor of rage and disbelief. But her fury wasn't directionless, it was strategic. Within the hour, she ordered her personal legal team to investigate the decree's validity. She wanted every clause examined, every signature verified, every possible loophole found. But no path was open. The document, they reported, was sealed by royal law, witnessed, countersigned, and backed by the crown itself. Still unwilling to accept defeat, Camilla made a final attempt to reach Charles, hoping to corner him in private, away from Catherine, away from advisors, away from judgment. But her request was intercepted. A senior royal aide appointed by William just days earlier politely but firmly informed her that His Majesty was resting and not to be disturbed. It wasn't a denial, it was a barrier, a statement. The door to the king had closed. In desperation, Camilla turned to the only person she believed might still stand by her, her daughter, Laura Lopes. According to an insider leak, the phone call was tearful and chaotic. Camilla allegedly spoke of betrayal, of being ambushed in silence, and of losing everything she'd earned. The call, now believed to have been recorded by an anonymous staffer, reportedly captured Camilla breaking down mid-sentence. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "They want me gone. They've always wanted me gone." The Queen Consort's unraveling didn't stop there. She penned a furious letter to Princess Anne, accusing her of orchestrating the coup and of violating a supposed sisterhood they had long pretended to uphold. But the letter never made it, intercepted by palace communications for being potentially inflammatory. It was filed under restricted internal records, Camilla would never know if Anne read it, and Anne never responded. The silence stung more than any reply. Then came the breaking point. A staff member reported seeing Camilla late at night, sitting alone in one of Clarence House's side galleries, crying silently beneath a portrait of Queen Elizabeth II. The same queen she had spent years trying to win approval from. The same queen who had once privately warned Charles, "She may wear the crown, but she will never hold the people." In that quiet moment, Camilla wasn't a queen. She was a woman stripped of purpose, watching a legacy dissolve in real time. But just as Camilla's rage threatened to spiral, Catherine made a move no one expected, one that would cement her new status. She didn't gloat, she didn't celebrate. Catherine simply stepped in. With Camilla sidelined, palace decisions required a new hand, and it was already gloved in experience, grace, and quiet command. What began as a private rebellion had now crowned a queen in all but name. In the wake of Camilla's collapse, the vacuum of leadership didn't last long. With Charles withdrawing further into convalescence, and the monarchy teetering on the edge of disarray, a decision was made, not loudly, not formally, but unmistakably. Catherine was no longer just the Princess of Wales. She was the de facto matriarch of the royal household. It began with subtle reassignments, her signature quietly appearing on official communications, schedules, and palace circulars. By the time the press office released the weekly agenda, it was clear Catherine was now overseeing every detail of the monarchy's daily operations, from ceremonial functions to internal family briefings. The Queen Consort's name was nowhere to be found. Beside her stood Sophie, no longer a background figure, but a quiet force of order. Acting as an unofficial royal coordinator, she managed logistics, reconciled departments once divided by Camilla's influence, and ensured Catherine's directives were implemented with the efficiency of a seasoned stateswoman. Together, the two women transformed the tone inside the palace. Where there had been fear, there was now clarity. Where there had been secrecy, there was now structure. But none of it came with announcement or spectacle. Their power move wasn't about optics. It was about endurance. An internal circular, distributed to senior royal aides and department heads, confirmed what many had already suspected. Catherine was now listed as the primary consult for family protocol and internal matters, a position that, while never publicly declared, had previously belonged to Camilla behind the scenes. This time, however, it carried the implicit approval of more than just circumstance. Sources confirmed that Anne herself had provided a handwritten letter to Catherine, a private blessing, sealed and stored in the royal vault, confirming her support for Catherine's new role. The letter reportedly began with a single sentence: "The future rests in steady hands." Even those on the fringes of power could feel the shift. Catherine was seen entering Queen Elizabeth's former private chapel alone, unannounced, and visibly contemplative. No staff accompanied her, no media was notified, but word still spread. That image, more than any headline, marked the moment the public truly understood. This wasn't just a transition of influence. It was the quiet rise of a sovereign in waiting. And outside the gates, support surged. Tabloids, once cautious in tone, began publishing bolder headlines. "Queen in waiting takes control. Catherine steps into the role the nation demands." Approval ratings soared. Even former critics found themselves drawn to her dignity and discipline. But while the kingdom began to adjust to this new reality, whispers still traveled through palace halls like smoke before a fire. Because one truth remained buried beneath the surface: Camilla had not formally been removed, only displaced, and the silence surrounding her could still crack. But while Catherine rises, the real question remains: is this the end of Camilla's reign, or merely the beginning of a darker royal war? The monarchy isn't built on gold or titles, it's built on loyalty, legacy, and silence shattered at the right moment. With Camilla's power quietly erased and Catherine's influence now entrenched, the royal family faces a turning point that could either heal the cracks or widen them forever. In the weeks that followed Catherine and Sophie's silent revolution, murmurs grew louder beyond palace walls. What began as quiet acknowledgement was transforming into public momentum. Newspapers that once hesitated to mention succession openly were now running speculative headlines about the future of the crown. The question wasn't if Catherine would take on a role beyond Princess of Wales, but when. Formalizing her authority was no longer taboo, it was being discussed in measured, strategic tones behind palace gates. Courtiers who had once reported directly to Camilla now sought Catherine's approval. First, her leadership wasn't ceremonial, it was operational, effective, and undeniable. Privately, William was said to have already taken steps of his own. Sources whispered that a special conversation had taken place between him and Prince George I that touched on tradition, duty, and something much deeper, the burden of legacy. George, still so young, was reportedly briefed on what was referred to as new family responsibilities. No titles were exchanged, no promises made, but those in the know said the shift was clear, preparation had begun. For the first time in decades, the monarchy was thinking 3 generations ahead, and Catherine was the axis on which that future turned. Meanwhile, Camilla remained at least in name. The title of Queen Consort was never formally revoked, but in every meaningful sense her power had vanished. Invitations ceased. Her office, once the center of activity, was quiet. She attended only the most necessary public events, and even then, her presence was muted, more symbolic than substantial. Behind the scenes, a select team of royal legal advisors had begun drafting what was called a transition protocol. This wasn't abdication. It wasn't exile. It was preparation for a public shift in representation, one that would allow Catherine to assume more visible responsibility without triggering a constitutional uproar. Every line of the draft was carefully measured, every clause constructed to balance respect with reform. In a move that surprised even the most seasoned insiders, Queen Elizabeth's former private secretary was summoned back for confidential consultations with Catherine. His return signaled something profound that the royal family wasn't simply reacting to crisis, but laying the groundwork for renewal. Those who had served a late queen understood continuity better than anyone, and now that wisdom was being placed directly at Catherine's disposal. A quiet torch was being passed not with ceremony, but with strategy. Public reaction mirrored the palace's internal shift. Approval ratings for the Catherine and Sophie leadership duo reached historic highs. Polls showed a united public sentiment, one that embraced the calm, composed stability Catherine offered and admired the unshakable loyalty Sophie had shown. Together, they were redefining what modern royal leadership looked like, less about spectacle, more about substance, less about inheritance, more about merit. But beneath the surface of victory lingered questions the crown wasn't ready to answer out loud. Would Camilla remain content in silence, or was a storm still brewing behind her carefully composed facade? Would Charles ever address the quiet coup that had reshaped his court? And most importantly, would the monarchy, so fractured by rivalry and betrayal, finally find peace, or was this merely the calm before a more brutal reckoning? This wasn't just a meeting, it was a reckoning. And the echo of that reckoning may just define the next generation of the British crown. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.